Right now, let's begin our programme and look at Donald Trump's work on the world stage with regular experts, friends of the programme. Catherine Philp, the Times World Affairs editor. Hello, Catherine.
Hi, Callum.
Hello. And also Tim Marshall, former foreign correspondent and author of Prisoners of Geography. Hello, Tim.
Greetings.
Really good to speak to both of you. Catherine, first of all, we must consider how things are progressing here. There's a European summit being convened in Germany on Wednesday. Leaders, of course, have been stressing that peace cannot be decided without Ukraine. Are we now seeing Europe beginning to play a part and perhaps exert some influence ahead of Trump's trip to Alaska?
Well, I think it's trying to and trying as hard as it can, but whether it's actually breaking through, it remains to be seen. Certainly, I know that, obviously there is some near panic, I think, in Europe about the prospect of allowing Trump to go ahead bilaterally with Putin without anyone else there. Look, the fact he's just said that he thinks he's going to Russia, it may have been a Freudian slip, but it's actually what the Russians think. Russians will tell you that they were taught in school that Alaska was leased to the United States for 100 years, and that lease ran out some time ago. So that actually is a bit of Russia. It doesn't say it's not a great start, no. Is it? Look, I'm in eastern Ukraine right at the moment, and I've just been on the border with Donbass speaking to people who are evacuating their homes because of the Russian bombardment and the advance. And it's, I have to say, utterly heartbreaking to ask them what they think about the idea of Trump and Putin deciding whether they will ever see their homes again.
Tim, let's bring you into the conversation then, and welcome, and please feel free to speak to one another as well. This summit in Alaska on Friday is already something of a diplomatic win for Putin, isn't it? At this point, he seems to be certainly facing no concessions. Is Trump going into this with actually any leverage at all?
Only sanctions, and I think the key to, and I think actually Putin has given way a little bit by going to the United States, no matter what, where Mr. Trump thinks he's going on Friday. Alaska remains one of the states of the United States of America. And I think that was a concession by Putin because there were various places that had been touted as the venue. And I think what unlocked this was the sanctions Trump put on India, which was specifically related to India buying Russian oil. I think that's what's brought him to the table. That's another thing to saying that he's now about to sign up for a peace deal. You know, that's a separate issue. I think Trump has given way slightly. I don't think he intends to give much away on Friday.
Yeah. Catherine, when Putin is pushing for kind of Ukrainian so-called neutrality when it comes to NATO membership and EU integration, you're there on the ground right now. These have been ambitions of Ukraine for years, and actually those ambitions show no sign of relenting. Is that fair to say from those that you're encountering even now?
I think that there's probably in Ukraine a more realistic emphasis on the prospect of entering the European Union rather than NATO. Although that is an ask, it is something that Ukraine would desperately want. There is some I think there's some pragmatism about the unlikeliness of that happening. And so that's why you've seen the Ukrainians talk about getting security guarantees or something like that could stand, that stand in place for NATO membership. I mean, the other point, of course, is what does NATO membership mean if Donald Trump can't be relied on to actually respond to an Article 5 invocation, and whether he's, really, truly fully committed to that collective self-defence.
Yeah. Tim, the NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte has called this summit a test of how serious Putin is about ending the war. Can you give us any analysis on that? Is Putin serious about ending the war?
Only on his terms,
yeah.
Which are completely unacceptable to the Ukrainians. I mean, this is the thing. A lot of people are saying, oh, this looks like a new Yalta, where the two superpowers sat down and divided Europe at the end of the Second World War. But there's a difference between this and Yalta, is that the Ukrainians don't have to say, oh, okay, we will accept the loss of 20% of our territory with no security guarantees that he won't come back for more. And in fact, the Ukrainians are making it quite plain that they there are members of parliament that will vote against it because it's against the constitution. Zelensky cannot just say, yes, okay. It has to go through the Ukrainian parliament. So I do think that Putin has realized he's under a bit of financial pressure. The economy really has massive problems. And if India was to buy less of its oil, that would really endanger the economy even more. But, you know, Trump, the great peacemaker, I mean, I've been looking back this afternoon about various things. He's doing some decent work between Egypt and Ethiopia. He did have a hand in the India-Pakistan ceasefire and in the Thai-Cambodian ceasefire. The White House did broker the recent peace deal between the DRC and Rwanda. It did broker mostly the Azerbaijan-Armenia peace deal. You know, they're doing a lot of work. But when it comes to the intractable issue of Ukraine-Russia, I think what he does is not what normally happens at meetings of this level. There are often minimum weeks and sometimes months of what we call, Catherine knows, Sherpas, the people that do the heavy lifting of the diplomacy up the mountain so that the two leaders can then arrive on the mountain top and say, we've hammered this out. And I just don't think they've done much Sherpering on this ahead of Friday.
Yeah, Catherine, come in on that.
Yeah, well, I think Tim is not only correct. The problem is that the one Sherpa they have sent is diplomatic neophyte who's come back. I mean, part of so Witkoff has not only got the most intractable conflict on the planet in his folio, which is obviously Israel Palestine. He's rushed off to Russia to meet with Putin and came back with a version of Russia's demands that was so confused that no one could actually work out what Putin was actually proposing. I mean, that kind of level of incompetence. Sherpas are usually highly experienced diplomats, usually that's political directors of the Foreign Office or, you know, the Foreign Ministry. They're not golfing buddies of the president.
Yeah, it's a good point. And what of some of the other conflicts then? As Tim mentions, Catherine, you know, Thailand, Cambodia, India, Pakistan, Azerbaijan, Armenia. Our sort of fundamental question that we've got running through our programme today is Trump good for peace? How would you answer that, Catherine?
Yeah. Well, what is peace? It's not just the absence of war. I mean, I was in DRC quite recently, just before that deal was done. The problem with that deal was that, you know, quite how many different people were involved in the conflict there. And it has effectively, nothing has changed on the ground. There's been hundreds of people killed just in the last few days in eastern Congo. So the situation is as bloody as it ever has been. I wouldn't say that Trump had got anywhere on Gaza. I think Azerbaijan, Armenia is certainly could be. You know, I think the jury's out on that. That one could come out not so badly. India and Pakistan, he certainly sort of cut that off at a moment that looked like it could escalate very critically, but it has resolved none of the underlying issues. And in fact, it's actually Donald Trump has rather badly embarrassed Narendra Modi, the Indian Prime Minister, by taking credit for that. And then in this very, very, I find very peculiar move, what Trump did with threatening those sanctions on India for buying Russian oil, because they're not due to come in until the end of August. Two, they came in the middle of negotiations with India over a trade deal. So essentially he was linking them to that more than he was to the process between Ukraine and Russia. China buys far more Russian oil than India does, and what he's actually done is, you know, he's pushing Modi towards Moscow, and since that all happened, Modi sort of come out making extravagant pledges of everlasting friendship towards Putin and talking about the strength of their relationship. So, I mean, why he did that then, I think, had much more to do with trade. And part of the problem about his approach to peacemaking is he tends to do it by threatening, making threats over trade. Again, it can stop things in their tracks at that moment, but it does nothing to resolve the underlying issues or really forge a durable peace that addresses the causes of these conflicts. So, long term, will any of these stick?
Catherine Philp and Tim Marshall, thank you both very much. Thank you for the insight and engaging conversation as we begin, well, something of a focus on whether President Trump is good for peace. Catherine Philp is World Affairs Editor at The Times, and Tim Marshall, former foreign correspondent and author of Prisoners of Geography. This is very much something for you to have your say on as well this afternoon. WhatsApp me, the number is 0333 003 2353. And I suppose pay attention to the context of this, the Alaska summit coming on Friday. And are we considering here, are we looking at the possibility here of Trump and Putin emerging with something resembling short-term stability at the cost of long-term instability? Is that what we're looking at here? Does that speak to what Catherine was suggesting there about Trump's peacemaking strategy via threats, largely over trade? Is that ever going to serve Ukraine well in this particular chapter of its history?